who was their MVP last year. Worth has been a winning player his entire career. And Zimmerman, who always seems to get big hits. They're also missing Denard Span. When he's in the lineup, they win ball games. He's a great guy out of the leadoff spot, and Steven Strasburg's not pitching. So it's a big series for the Mets, bigger, of course, than for the Nationals, but they're primed to get beaten in the series.
And the Mets have their pitching lined up the way they wanted, with Matt Harvey leading off the series tonight.
Well, Harvey's been good, but the best he's ever pitched is always against the Nationals. He's 3-1 against them. His ERA is 0.68, so he loves pitching against his team.
Gio Gonzalez has had good numbers against the Mets over his career, but this has not been his best season.
It hasn't been his best season, but the bullpen's blown 5 of his leads, or his record would be better. But he's 8-4 in 12 starts against the Mets since he joined the Nationals.
So the Mets begin a big series against the Nats in D.C. tonight, trying to make up some ground. Only 2 games behind starting the series. It's the Mets and the Nats. All the action coming your way on SNY. Go beyond utility by StubHub, the official fan-to-fan ticket marketplace of the New York Mets. And by State Farm. Today's State Farm agent of the game is Pat Cawley of Glendale, New York. Contact Pat at patcawley.com. Where's your picture, Ron?
I don't know.
Come celebrate Jacob deGrom's historic All-Star Game performance with a 4 for $48 ticket offer. Take advantage of 4 tickets for $48 during the Mets' upcoming homestand, July 23rd through August 2nd at Citi Field. Purchase tickets online at Mets.com/deGrom. Time for you to tweet your strongest fan photo. Use hashtag SNYDataStrongFan, and you might see yourself in an upcoming broadcast brought to you by T-Mobile. Matt Harvey getting set to face the Nats, whom he has owned. Can he maintain the deed? Mets and Nats, first pitch coming up. great Mets prizes all month long, courtesy of Citi with the Citi Bike Sweepstakes. Check out Mets.com/Citi Bike Sweepstakes for official rules and details. Here's your Geico Mets lineup tonight. A little different look with Anthony Recker back from Las Vegas, catching Matt Harvey for the first time in his career. Eric Campbell starting at first base with Lucas Duda sitting against the lefty. John Mayberry in left with Michael Kadyr's knee still an issue.
Well, there's the Toyota numbers for Gio this year. 6 wins, 4 losses, a high ERA for him. His curveball, which is really usually unhittable, 150 they hit off it last year. They're hitting about 220, 230 off it this year.
First time in his Nats career that Gio's ever given up more hits than innings pitched. Curtis Granderson will lead things off. Granderson did not start yesterday against the lefty Tim Cooney, but he came off the bench and had a huge impact. He showed more energy than we have seen from anybody on this team in a month with his base running and his hitting. And he takes a fastball for a strike from Gio Gonzalez, and we're underway.
Well, when you signed him, right, you signed an impact player, and you said he played like that yesterday.
I mean, a hustle double, 2 stolen bases, had a hit in the middle of the winning rally. He was everywhere. And he didn't come into the game until the 8th inning. Maybe that's the way you go. Start late, finish strong. Ruben Tejada on deck, and then Daniel Murphy. Tejada's been the hottest bat in the Mets lineup during these difficult days. Granderson swings through the fastball from Gio, and it's 1-2.
So the best 10 innings Granderson's played all this year came yesterday.
Right. Well, he has struggled against lefties this year, hitting just 131. That's why Terry sat him yesterday, but in there against Gio tonight. And he takes strike 3 call. Granderson caught looking for the first out of the night.
Well, I mentioned that hitters are hitting a little better on the curveball, but not this kind of curveball. Beautiful break by Gonzalez. Of course, like defense behind Gio. A lot of different names out there. One familiar, though, Matt Tendecker in left field, Michael Taylor, great athlete in center, and Bryce Harper. Escobar and Espinoza, Robinson have been good. Desmond's had an awful year defensively. And Jose Lobaton behind the plate.
Well, here is Tejada, who had 3 hits in the long game yesterday and had the go-ahead sacrifice fly in the 18th inning. He's got a 7-game hitting streak working now, up to 255 on the year, and takes a fastball strike from Gonzalez. Gio threw a 94 with that fastball. He's averaged under 92 this year. Mets saw him back in May at Citi Field. He threw 7 scoreless innings. And lately he's been pitching well also. Last 3 starts, 2-0, 0.9. But in between he's had some really shaky outings.
Well, he loves pitching to Jose Lobaton, the catcher, who's a great framer of the ball. Much more Darno for the Mets when he's healthy. Came from Tampa Bay. Hasn't hit too much, but great defensive player.
Always so strange when the Mets face the Nats, and Wilson Ramos is out of the lineup. He's had such success against Mets pitching over the years.
Ramos is probably sitting there saying, "You're costing me 3 hits tonight."
340 lifetime hitter against the Mets. Matt Williams, though, putting Lobaton in because of his affinity for Gio. 1-2 to Tejada with Murphy on deck. Mets are 3-4 against the Nats this year. Took 2 out of 3 here to open the season, and it's taken high 2-2. Nats then took 3 out of 4 from the Mets in New York. And of course, last year the Nats completely demolished the Mets, winning 15 of 19. And the Mets have known since day 1 of this season, if they wanted to be competitive in the division, they were going to have to do better against Washington.
Let's face it, though, the Mets have gotten a little lucky this season in the sense that they're playing Washington when they played in the opening series and this series here without them at full strength.
The Mets know what it's like not to be at full strength, but the Nats are missing such a huge number of key parts and have for long stretches this year. One of the reasons they're only 8 games over 500. 3-2, and Tejada just got a piece of that fastball to stay alive.
We had a good picture of Terry Collins. I was not in St. Louis. I heard his, at least the head-to-head last season when the Nats dominated the Mets, like you said. He got thrown out. I heard it was a good one.
Well, he got thrown out in a case of rabbit ears. He argued a ball call to Lucas Duda that was called a strike, and he came charging out. Good 60-yard dash for Terry. Grounded down to third, a foul ball.
You know, with replay, you don't have those kind of confrontations as much as they used to. So, I mean, I like watching it. I'm sure Terry doesn't like watching them.
I ended up watching the rest of the game from the clubhouse TV, and didn't love what he saw in the 9th inning when the Mets left the tying run at third Friday night. 8th pitch of the at bat from Gio to Tejada, and it's just outside. He held the swing, ball 4, and Tejada is on with a 1-out walk.
Well, it's those kind of at bats where it makes you shake your head and say, boy, Ruben might be back to where he was when he almost hit 300 for a full season. Taking that pitch just off the corner and getting a base on balls. You know, last year that was one of his strengths. Remember when he was in the 8th hole, he walked a lot. Well, he commanded the strike zone much better now.
Here's Daniel Murphy, who had a rough series offensively in St. Louis, went just 2 for 15. Tejada at first and 1 out. And although Murphy is not usually the guy to stand around and wait for walks, we've seen it in the past with Gio Gonzalez. When he walks a guy, sometimes the walks can expand geometrically.
Yeah, he's his own worst enemy. He's one of those guys that can let anger really infiltrate his pitching.
He'll be 30 years old in September.
But he's also a guy, when he's got it going, he can really turn that into 6, 7, 8 strong innings.
And the Mets have seen plenty of that. He has an 8-4 record against New York, a 2.87 ERA. He's thrown some terrific games against the Mets. One and 1 to Murphy. And he takes the curveball off the plate. 2-1. Murph has been strangely silent against lefties this year. He's hitting 186 against left-hand pitching, and you just don't expect that of him.
Well, most left-handed pitchers are going to pitch Murph middle of the plate away. He's always been good at going the opposite way, but this year they pitched him in more.
He pulls that one down the right field line. Fair ball bouncing into the corner. Tejada on his way to third. Harper plays the carom well, so they'll hold Tejada at third. Murph dives into second base with a double, and the Mets have the table set, second and third and 1 out.
Well, Gio Gonzalez, when he gets behind hitters, his fastball is very straight, and Murph jumps all over it. What I found surprising is the way it caromed. Harper had to play at second base. He didn't know it, though, and threw it into second baseman Espinosa.
So Murphy picks up his 17th double of the year.
Murph, you can tell the way he's running. He thought Harper was going to try for him at second base.
Now Wilmer Flores hitting cleanup. We'll try and get the first runs home. Flores 3 for 9 yesterday. Nats have the infield back with the exception of Robinson at first base, so they'll concede a run on a ground ball. And Flores whacks one foul.
Well, you saw 18 innings of this yesterday, right, Gary? So Mets need to get these runs in, or at least one of them in.
Mets had runners in scoring position in every extra inning yesterday, and they had runners on base in the last 17 innings. But they only scored 3, went 1 for 26 with runners in scoring position. An early chance here for Flores. And Gio Gonzalez gets ahead of him 0-2.
You have to have the ability, especially if you're the fourth place hitter, to be able to, when the defense is giving you a run, you have to take advantage of it.
John Mayberry hitting 5th in the order on deck. Wilmer's never had a hit against Gio Gonzalez, 0 for 10. And finds himself quickly behind in the count here, 0-2. Tejada at third, Murphy at second, 1 out, just getting started here in D.C.
Interesting. Both Wilmer and Murph, when they're pitched in, there's a little yelp that they'll let out that you can hear from our audio.
I think that's something that's more present in the game now than it had ever been. Baseball following tennis.
There you go.
2-2 coming. And it's tapped in front of the plate. The runners are going to hold. And Gonzalez makes the throw to get Flores for the second out.
Well, when you're pitching and you have guys in scoring position, there's a few things that you want to do. One, pop them up, strike them out, or get a comebacker. And that's what Gio gets. Looks the runner back and a strike to first base. And there's nothing really Tejada could do there. That was the perfect base running play. Couldn't come home.
So Flores unable to get the run in. It's left to John Mayberry. Mayberry starting for the second straight day against the lefty. Went 0 for 2 yesterday before he was double switched out of the game. Mayberry's got 2 home runs on his ledger against Gonzalez. Just 4 for 22 overall against this lefty. And he takes a fastball for a strike. This is one of those situations that John Mayberry was brought to this team to fulfill. Lefty, middle of the order. He has had a fine career hitting lefties, but not a good season. Hitting just 200 against left-handed pitching.
The problem, Gary, is it tends to snowball. What happens is when you're not having a good year, he's batting 182, 200 against lefties, like you said, is that it's almost like you can feel the pressure that's on his shoulders get more and more as time goes by against the lefties.
There is splits this year. Second and third and 2 out. And Mayberry pulls one down to third. Nice stop by Escobar. Gets to his feet and throws him out to end the inning. Yunel Escobar has made the transition to third base this year brilliantly, and he makes a terrific play to take a base hit away from Mayberry and keep the Mets off the board. Mets strand a pair, no score. Matt Harvey faces the Nationals in the bottom of the first. Michael Taylor will lead things off. Taylor getting most of the time these days in center field takes a strike.
Well, Harv has, we said it in the open, 3-1, 0.68 ERA against these Nationals. 16 straight scoreless innings.
13 of those have come this year. He pitched 6 against the Nats in April and then 7 more scoreless in May. There's the starting lineup for the Nats. Bryce Harper hitting third, Escobar fourth. Those have been the 2 big guns in the Nats lineup this year. Taylor hitting at .239, filling in for the injured Denard Span. And he takes a fastball for strike 3 called. So quick work by Harvey. 99-mile-an-hour fastball gets him looking for the first out.
Fastball on the knees called by Mike Winters. Good framing there by Anthony Recker, who's never caught Harvey before. There's the cheap numbers on Harvey so far this year in his 17 starts. A lot of hits for innings pitched for a guy with that kind of power.
Doesn't it strike you as odd that Anthony Recker has never caught Harvey before? Because he was on the team in 2013 when Harvey had his breakout season. He was with the Mets for most of this year until the middle of June, but hasn't caught him for an inning.
You told me before the game I couldn't believe it.
There's Danny Espinosa dragging a bunt. Harvey off the mound. He bobbles it, and Espinosa is safe. Well, it looked like Matt was going to have a relatively easy play, but it clanks off the heel of his mitts, and Espinosa's on.
Well, this is a play that Harvey should make 99 times out of 100. He doesn't make it there. Maybe he didn't look the ball into his glove because he had plenty of time. Espinosa can run pretty well, but not great. What was interesting is Espinosa did that in yesterday's game against Zach Greinke, and Greinke beat him to the bag because the bunt was to the first baseman. This was a pretty easy play for Harvey.
A very charitable scoring decision. Wow. They've given Espinosa credit for a hit. That's a play that Harvey certainly should have made and should have been an error. So here's Bryce Harper, who's never had a hit against Matt Harvey, 0 for 12 in his career, but he has hit everybody this year, having an MVP season and perhaps a Triple Crown caliber season. Harper hitting .337. That's third in the league, tied for the league lead in home runs with 27, and fourth in the league in RBIs with 64. But there you see the career numbers against Harvey.
And lots of punch outs, but Bryce Harper has handled that ball up and away a little better, a lot better this year. And that's what Harvey usually goes to strike him out.
Ball and a strike to Harper. Bryce is now 22 years old, and after a couple of seasons where injuries played a role in keeping his production down, he's stayed healthy, and he has been the dominant player in the National League.
There's the defense. He can hit it anywhere. Got great power to left field, center, and right. See, that is the pitch that Harvey uses to strike out Harper. That ball up and away. And you could tell Harper had a little better swing than he did in the first series. Still a little late, but a better swing.
So if you're Harvey, do you throw the same pitch but a little higher?
You got to go higher.
Matt has come out throwing hard today, 97 to 99 early in this ball game. Espinosa at first and one out.
Well, 9 days ago, right? Harvey's last time he was on a mound. So he should be as strong as he's going to be.
It was against Arizona. Not only pitched a good game, gave up 2 runs in 7 innings, hit his first career home run in that game as well against Patrick Corbin.
I think you had Harvey in the pool, so you win.
Well, no, Syndergaard beat everybody. I don't think anybody's going to hit one as far as Syndergaard did. Right. Not among the pitchers anyway. Recker sets up outside, and Harper takes it up and away. So there's that higher fastball. Harper able to lay off.
Boy, 99 miles an hour. We've seen Harvey this year. To me, he's been around that 95, 96 mark. 3-4 miles an hour more, faster.
Average fastball velocity this season, 95.9, but he has come out firing bullets tonight. 2-2 to Harper with Escobar on deck. And time asks for Escobar hitting cleanup tonight. It's only the 3rd time this year he's done it. Of course, Matt Williams has had to get creative with his batting order with so many of his important players on the sidelines, from Rendon to Zimmerman to Worth to Span.
Clint Robinson was their cleanup hitter in yesterday's game.
2-2, and Harper takes a slider low and in. And a full count.
Robinson had a tough time against Greinke, but so does everybody.
Well, the Mets will be the next opponent for Greinke, who's working on 43 2/3 consecutive scoreless innings. Now, what, 15 and a third away from Hershiser's all-time record. His next start will be against the Mets, presumably on Friday.
Well, there's been a lot of strikeouts with Harper against Harvey, but this is a different year. I would send Espinosa here.
3-2 with 1 out. Not running. And Harper takes ball 4, and the Nats have 2 men on. Remember that Harvey's last 2 starts, he's walked a total of 9 batters in 12 innings, a little bit against type.
There's Alexis Mets defense. Mayberry Jr. in left field for Kadire. Still got the bad knee. Infield's the same, except for Eric Campbell. Lucas Duda on the bench. And Anthony Recker and Harvey are the battery mates for the first time.
Duda on the bench because of the tough day he had yesterday. 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts. Here's Yunel Escobar, who has been as pleasant a surprise as there's been in the National League. He's always been a good player, but he's having by far his best year. And a time when the Nats have really needed him to.
I think when he first came up, this is the kind of player they thought he was going to play like every year.
Hitting .324, that's 4th in the National League, but he has grounded into 13 double plays this year, and Harvey could use one of those. And he paints the outside corner with a fastball, 0-1.
This is a good crew for if you're a pitcher. Mike Winters behind the plate and the rest of his crew. Hunt strikes, like to call strikes, very aggressive.
It's the 4M crew.
There you go.
Mike, Mark, and Marty. Espinosa at second, Harper at first, and 1 out. Grounded toward the hole. Murphy can't get it. Base hit. Espinosa will try to score. Mayberry's throw to the plate is not in time, and the Nats have the early lead. Yunel Escobar with an RBI single, 1-0 Washington.
Well, it finds a hole. He got the ground ball on the runner, two-seamer inside. Not enough range, though, for Murphy. Can't get to that ball, and by the time Mayberry gets it, Espinosa scores pretty easily. Interesting about this play, you see Murphy had to dive for the ball. Once he dives, then Tejada, the shortstop, he's got to become the person that serves as the cutoff man. He did not do that. So Mayberry's throw all the way into Recker.
So Harvey's inability to field Espinosa's bunt comes back to bite him. Espinosa comes in to score the first run of the game.
Extra outs against any team always spells trouble.
Here's Clint Robinson. He swings and misses on the high fastball. Robinson has played some left field, played some right field, but mostly played first base, and that's where he is tonight. 30-year-old minor league journeyman who before this year only had 13 big league at-bats.
Boy, that's a lot of first inning runs for a guy throwing 99 miles an hour tonight.
Harper at second, Escobar at first, and Robinson takes curveball for a strike. And it's 0-2.
I love Robinson's comments when he made the team out of spring training. He said, how's it feel to make your first team? He said, listen, I've never made the first cut in spring training. So he was ecstatic. A home run hitter in the minor leagues.
Had a handful of at-bats with the Royals and with the Dodgers, but getting his first extensive playing time and doing well with it. I mean, I don't think anybody had Clint Robinson pegged for a .345 on base percentage in the middle of July. It's a big, strong guy who has always been expected to hit home runs. He's only got 4 home runs in 159 at bats.
141 minor league home runs.
Harvey ahead on Robinson, 0-2 with Ian Desmond on deck. And he bounces that one. Harper breaks for third. The throw goes to second, and now they've got Escobar hung up. Harper standing between third and home. The tag made by Campbell, and he forgot about Harper, and Harper scores. Well, Flores had his eye on Harper all the way, but once the throw was made to Campbell, he seemed to completely forget about Harper, who comes in to score the second run of the inning.
When you have inexperienced people playing at positions they're not familiar with, they're going to make mistakes. Great play here by Recker to identify that second base is where he had to go. Flores did a nice job, and then once Campbell applied the tag, he forgot about Harper, and Harper scored pretty easily. When I saw that play again, Flores could at some point have run towards Harper. I think Harper was a little far off third base.
So 2 runs are home in the inning, 2 out and nobody on. A 1-2 count to Robinson. And he pops it up in the middle of the infield. Tejada will take charge. And that retires the side, but a damaging first inning for Matt Harvey. Couldn't field a bunt, and 2 runs ensued. 2-0 Nats. Nats found themselves behind 2-0 as the Nats are able to scratch out a couple of runs in the first inning. Here's how they got the second.
Well, a couple of things went wrong. First, Record, nice job of blocking the ball. But once he throws it to Tejada, Tejada's got to hold the ball up. And as he's holding it up, he needs to fake the throw a couple of times. Why? Because that'll really indicate if Harper's going to run. He never made the fake. And I think one of the reasons Campbell, I don't think he forgot the outs. I think he wasn't sure that he got the tag down. Now you see Harper. When he comes to third base, watch Floor, watch Tejada. Right now is when he had to run at Harper, not throw the ball to Campbell.
Campbell will lead off in the second inning. If you're scoring that, it's a wild pitch moving Harper to third. The play goes 2-6-3 on Escobar, and then Harper scores on a fielder's choice. Campbell drills one and caught by Escobar. He's been everywhere early in this game. Second fine defensive play by Escobar. And that's a very tough first out.
Well, 2 stars in my scorebook back-to-back for Escobar. It's funny, Escobar in yesterday's game missed a routine double play grounder. Today before the game, he's one of the few players that was taking infield and took about 50 ground balls. Boy, it's rewarded today.
Let's see, we've played an inning plus an out. Escobar's already made 2 good defensive plays, driven in a run, and evaded the tag long enough to allow Harper to score. So he has been responsible for everything. This one he can't quite corral, and Desmond will put that in his pocket, and Lagares is safe at first. So the Mets finally able to hit something that Escobar cannot make a brilliant play on.
Well, he was playing in because of the threat of the bunt for a base hit by Lagares, and that gave Lagares the hit because he just hit it too hard.
So Lagares, who had 10 at-bats yesterday, a rarely accomplished feat. Not quite Dave Schneck. The only Met ever to have 11 at-bats in a game. That was the 25-inning affair against the Cardinals in '74. Here's Recker. Just recalled from Las Vegas last night. Kevin Plawecki caught all 18 innings yesterday in St. Louis. Johnny Manel sent down. Mets wanted a right-handed bat against Gio today, and so Recker is here.
7 of his 22 hits in Las Vegas went over the fence.
At .293 in 21 games for the 51s. Hitting just .143 at the big league level this year. And a good changeup by Gio. A ball and a strike.
Well, he's never hit for a high average with the Mets, but he's always been consistent that he seems to get the big hit when they need it, especially the home runs.
He had a smart defensive play on that wild pitch. He had no chance for Harper at third, through to try and get the back runner. It just didn't work out the way it should have for the Mets. Record last played a game for the Mets June 12th against the Braves, so 6 weeks away. And he takes a strike, 1 and 2. It was something of a shocking move when Anthony got sent down.
I asked Terry Collins about it. He said it was very difficult to call him into the office and let him know that he was going down. He saw Harvey hitting in that on deck. Sorry.
Lagares at first and 1 out, 1 and 2 to Recker. Gio Gonzalez had a great year his first year with the Nats, won 21 games at a 2.89 ERA. He's seen his ERA go up every year since. 3.36, 3.57, this year 3.99. There goes Lagares. The throw by Lobaton, not in time. Lagares steals his 7th base of the year.
Well, it's nice to see the Mets doing some running. You mentioned Granderson yesterday at curveball upstairs. So the extra time it took to get to the plate allowed Lagares to steal that base. Nice sweep tag here by Espinosa. Fields that ball in 1 hop, sweeps it across, but a little too late on Lagares. Good slide.
It's quite clear that with the lack of offense the Mets have had lately, Terry Collins is resigned to having to do everything possible. He's been playing hit and run. He had a squeeze bunt yesterday, stolen bases. His team has got to try and make the most of their opportunities. 2 and 2 to Recker with a runner in scoring position.
Not only that, by stealing there, Lobaton had to come up in the strike zone. Might have taken away a strike on a curveball by Gio.
And record goes down on the changeup. Second strikeout for Gonzalez. 2 out of the inning.
Well, this is what separates Gio when he has his real good games. You know about his good fastball, but it's straight. You know about his best pitch, the curveball. But when he's getting his changeup over, makes him highly effective.
Well, here is Matt Harvey, fresh off his first big league home run in his last start against Arizona. 4 hits this year, including a double and a homer. Matt has driven in 3 runs. He's got Lagares at second and 2 out. And he swings through the fastball, 0-1. It was such an odd inning against Harvey in that first. If he fields the bunt, the whole inning proceeds differently.
Well, I know they gave a hit to Espinosa, but I mean Harvey will even tell you. I mean that's a play. The Mets pitchers are great athletes. That's a play you got to make.
One to Matt. Punches one foul. 1-2.
You can sometimes see that play not made by pitchers when a D. Gordon or someone who has great speed does it, because they make you go a little quicker at the ball, but not when an Espinosa's running.
One-two coming. Gio backs Harvey up 2-2. Yesterday, Jacob deGrom got a chance to pinch hit after the very odd move of Mike Matheny, walking the go-ahead run into scoring position, and deGrom then drew a walk. Didn't work out because Duda struck out with the bases loaded, but it felt good for deGrom. Curveball misses 3-2.
That's a manager very comfortable with his 58-win team. You don't see that ever. Maybe when Bonds was up in his heyday.
Yeah, it was Murph.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's almost as though he didn't have the scouting report on deGrom. Very strange. 3-2, and Harvey fouls off the fastball.
Well, get used to it, Mets fans. I think you're going to see more and more Mets pitchers when it's not their day getting a chance to swing the bat.
In fact, Terry Collins was talking today about Michael Kadire, who's sitting out because he took some medication for his knee, but he could pinch hit. And he said, well, if Michael gets on, we'll use Carlos Torres to run for him because he's our fastest guy. 7th pitch of the at-bat, and he strikes him out with a high fastball. So back-to-back strikeouts for Gio Gonzalez to finish off the top of the second. 2-0 Nationals. interactive with SNY Game Day on SNY.TV, featuring pitch-by-pitch coverage, player cards, and in-depth stats. Check out SNY Game Day on SNY.TV, your online home of all things New York sports. There are your city starters for this series for the Mets. Harvey, DeGrom, and Syndergaard lined up for the 3 games.
So the Washington Nationals will have faced Clayton Kershaw, Zach Greinke, Harvey, DeGrom, Syndergaard. Then they go to Pittsburgh and face Garrett Cole.
So you're saying that they've run into something of a gauntlet?
Yes, they have.
Ian Desmond leading off in the home second. This has been as dreadful a season as an impending free agent can ever have. He's had a bad year defensively. He's had a terrible year offensively. And it's at a time when they've needed him to be himself because of all the people who have been missing from their batting work.
Which should tell some people on the free agent market, when he becomes a free agent, maybe he's one of those ancillary players. He's not one of the main players. Because when he had all the people around him, the Worths, the Spans, that's when he was hitting his 20 home runs plus and the RBIs.
3-time Silver Slugger. Should be right in his prime, 29 years old. Struck out 103 times this year. Only 2 players in the league have struck out more. 248 on base percentage. Just as bad a year as you can have for a good player. 1-2 to Desmond. Flies one out to right field. Granderson back a few strides, has it lined up. And that's the first out. And you remember the defense started right from the beginning of the season. That first series against the Mets, Desmond had defensive problems that just mushroomed.
Well, the Mets didn't beat Scherzer that day. They beat Desmond in the Nationals that day. I think the last thing I can say about it is that he turned down over $100 million. And that turning down, it works for some players. Max Scherzer did it and turned it into $50-60 million more. It doesn't work for every player, and the pressure is only going to mount as the season goes deeper.
There's Jose Lobaton, the switch hitting catcher, making his 22nd start of the year. Back up to Wilson Ramos. Lobaton not much of a bat, hitting .205, and Harvey has him off balance. Strike 1.
As Max yesterday gave up a run in 6 innings. That ended up at a loss for him. He has 8 losses now. 5 of them he's given up 1 run or less.
You know, there was a time about a month ago when Scherzer looked like the shoe-in for the Cy Young. He has been lapped by Zach Greinke over the last 6 weeks.
The Dodgers are trying to keep that Cy Young in their house, aren't they?
I mean, Greinke's at what now, 1.30? I mean, that's just incredible.
I saw number 16 go 1.53 one year, and I thought I'd never see it again.
1-2 to Lobaton. Well, it's all Dodgers on that list. It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, Greinke now has the longest streak since Hershiser set the record 27 years ago. 2-2 to Lobaton. Well, the Mets will get Kershaw Thursday night, Greinke Friday night to start that series at home against the Dodgers. Of course, they had that same gauntlet in L.A. and they won 2 of 3.
Well, it's interesting to watch Greinke yesterday, Gary, because he probably had better stuff when he won a Cy Young Award in 2009. He threw 95 plus then. He throws 92, 93 now. But boy, he is so precise. He's become quite an artist, 60 feet 6 inches away.
2-2 to Lobaton. And he pulls one down to first. Campbell on the backhand. Makes the flip to Harvey for the second out. What interests me when I watch Greinke, and there's Bryce Harper's thoughts about Greinke, and he's talking about Greinke getting calls off the plate. To me, what's interesting about Greinke is that he gets so many swings and misses out of the strike zone.
He does. He has great control. This is going to sound funny, folks. Great control of throwing pitches out of the strike zone to retire hitters. Now, what does that mean? Anyone could bounce a curveball, but you have to make the hitter look like it's going to be a strike, so they have to offer at it. He does it better than anyone.
Here's the former Met, Matt Dendecker, getting the start in left field tonight. Dendecker had a go-ahead pinch hit home run for the Nats over the weekend. Just 30 at-bats for Matt, and he's already got a couple of home runs after not hitting a home run as a Met last year in 53 games. And he made a lot of changes last year. He'd gone from a guy who would a lot of swinging and missing to being more of a contact hitter.
He's a real good athlete who's done everything he can to try to stay in the big leagues. Always looked forward to when he was in a Mets uniform. He's a hustler. And when I look at him, it reminds me of Kirk Neuenhuis, I haven't had a chance to say, wow, you checked another one off the list. Santana's no-hitter, and now with the 3 home runs.
I wish you'd been there.
I wish I had been, too.
Could it have been a more unlikely guy?
Right.
I mean, Neuenhuis hitting the 3 home runs at home, first ever to do it, would have been like Don Schulze throwing the first no-hitter for the Mets.
Exactly. Don Schulze. Don Ossie. It's a day he'll always remember. Wow.
Dendecker fouls it off. Well, Kirk had a nice series in St. Louis as well. Didn't have a hit the first game, but had a couple of hits on Saturday and then came off the bench and had a big double as a pinch hitter yesterday. So things are looking up for Kirk, who's been DFA'd twice this year.
And he might get more playing time because of the bulkiness of Kadyr's knee.
2-2 to Dendecker. And Harvey misses low and in with a slider, 3-2.
We've heard Harvey complain before when he's had too much rest in the 6-man rotation. Well, 9 days off now, and he's not sharp yet.
He had thrown 16 straight scoreless innings against the Nats till he gave up the 2 runs in the first inning today. 3-2 coming. And it misses inside, ball 4. So Dendecker draws a 2-out walk. Second walk for Harvey, and that's now 11 walks in his last 14 innings. Well, we mentioned that Anthony Recker had never caught Matt before, and now he sneaks under that list right there at the bottom.
Rob Johnson 3 times.
Rob Johnson, who also pitched, if you'll recall.
That's right, in Toronto in that game. Yeah. If you're at home, why did he throw a curveball to Dendecker? Well, you have the pitcher up next. The only problem is Gio, although he's 1 for 19, has always been a pretty good hitter.
Has 3 career home runs, 1 each of the last 3 seasons, none yet this year. And he takes a strike. Gio, a lifetime .083 hitter. He only has 16 hits, but 3 of the 16 have left the ballpark. So when he's swinging hard. Gio grew up in Hialeah, Florida. His family, though, is from the New York area, right?
New Jersey. Hialeah, that's outside of Miami, right?
Where the racetrack is or was. Check swing, and he stopped it in time. Laid off the curveball, 1-2.
Usually when the pitcher is up, this is almost an automatic call every time when they check their swing, but not there.
Mike McClinsky, the first base umpire, one of the 4 M's. Dendecker at first and 2 out, and Gio fouls off the fastball. And making Harvey work a little bit harder here in the second inning. He's had long at bats against all 4 hitters in this inning and driving his pitch count up toward 40 through 2 innings.
Well, it's a perfect night to pitch. A little below 90, some humidity. Always makes you feel nice and loose as a pitcher.
That's line, but right at Murphy, who took his eye off it and lost it. Well, when you don't pay attention to detail, when you play nonchalant ball, these are the things that happen.
Well, what happens is you're trying to style there, Gary, and he didn't look it in, kind of just snatched at it. Let's see where his eyes are. They're looking right at the hitter, Gonzalez, or looking at home plate, not at the ball into the glove. Same thing happened to Harvey in that first inning. You have to look the ball into the webbing.
Well, the Mets have not been on point in this game early, and Terry Collins made the point of saying that this was an important series. It's not a be-all end-all series, but it's a really important series because the Mets are playing a Nats team that's not at full strength. Yeah. They'll play them again in 10 days when they might well be at full strength, and the Mets have made some big mistakes early in this game. And now Michael Taylor will try and cash it in. 1st and 2nd and 2 out. Taylor was caught looking in the first inning. And he pulls one to Murphy. He handles this one. Now the race to the bag, and he barely beats Dendecker there to end the inning. Might not have been the best decision by Murph, but he turned on the Jets and just got there ahead of Dendecker for the force play that gets Harvey through the inning. Barely. Third inning is presented by your local tri-state Audi dealers and the uncompromised Audi A3 sedan. Mets will try and get their heads out of St. Louis as we go to the third inning.
Well, the only person that came on the field for the Mets before the game today was Eric Campbell, who took some ground balls at first base. The entire team just hit in the cages. They didn't come out and take ground balls because of the 18-inning game yesterday.
Well, now that could have been for three different reasons.
Yeah.
One is the 18-inning game yesterday. Two is that it was blazing hot this afternoon. It was 95 degrees. Curtis Granderson leads off. The third thing is what the Nats have now done with opposing teams taking batting practice.
That's right.
The soft love ballads that they play during BP when everybody else is playing, upbeat music. That's their psychological warfare.
I think it's great. You hear songs that you've never heard before. Christopher Cross comes to mind.
Well, the problem with doing something like that is that payback can sometimes be very difficult.
Right.
And I'm not sure what other clubs have in their arsenal to try and counter that psychological warfare. 2-2 to Granderson.
Yes, we're talking to you, Vito.
Well, the Nats will be in town in a week and a half. We'll see what Vito has up his sleeve. Granderson went down looking his first time up. And this time works the count full. Granderson, Tejada, and Murphy at the top of the batting order against Gonzalez, who required 38 pitches to get through the first two innings. Got some significant trouble in the first. And Granderson grounds one right to Espinoza. Always a good glove man. One away.
Gary, you think if Ian Desmond leaves for free agency and goes someplace else, Espinoza scoots over there to shortstop?
Well, he could, and so could Escobar. Right. So they've certainly got plenty of options.
Because Rendon at some point is their everyday third baseman when he comes back.
Well, he could play third.
He could play second,
or he
too.
Could play second. Yeah. Right now, he's playing third. Rendon is on rehab, but there's no guarantee he's going to stay there because, Escobar went to third he volunteered to when Rendon got hurt early this season, and it's worked out so well that they might just keep him there. He has just been tremendous, and we've already seen it tonight.
And Rendon, who was the third baseman who learned to play second base, had his best year offensively last year playing that position.
Tejada walked his first time up. And Rubin takes the changeup in the dirt, 1-1. Daniel Murphy on deck. Mets at second and third and one out in the first inning, but couldn't get a run in against Gonzalez. And then Harvey gave up a couple of scratch runs in the bottom of the inning. And that's where we are. When the year began, everybody looked at the Nats rotation and thought it could be one of the best of all time. Hasn't quite worked out that way yet. Scherzer's been unbelievable. Strasburg's been okay and then hurt. Gio has not been at the top of his game. Pfister was spent some time on the disabled list.
He had a 15-game winner last year. Had to go to the bullpen. Tanner Roark. That's why they're going to pitch a youngster tomorrow against the Mets.
Another ground ball for Espinosa. And that's the second out. And then there's Jordan Zimmerman, another guy who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. The Mets will see him on Wednesday. And Zimmerman's been good, but certainly not at his best this year.
So they're all a little off their game other than the Mad Max.
The only problem with Scherzer right now that might be an issue down the road is his workload. He has worked a ton of innings, and of course he's been great, but he's been working deeper into games than ever before. There's Murphy.
Never had a complete game or shutout till last season to Scherzer.
Murphy doubled into the right field corner his first time up, and Gio falls behind him 2-0. So far this year, the Nats have the 6th best staff ERA in the National League. The Mets are 3rd. I think everybody figured the Nats would be in the top couple. That's pulled foul. They've issued the fewest walks in the league, but they've given up as many hits as innings pitched, which is shocking when you think about the quality of their staff. I mentioned earlier, Gio, for the first time in his career, has given up more hits than innings pitched. Murphy hits the comebacker. Nice snag by Gonzalez. And he has his first 1-2-3 inning of the night. Matt Harvey hits back to the mound for the bottom of the third, down 2-0. You want heat? Well, we got heat.
Three of the 6, the 7.
Top 7 fastball velocities in the National League this year belong to Mets. Matt Harvey's number 2 on that list, but he's shooting for number 1 tonight, throwing a lot harder than that 95.9. However, he's behind in the game, mostly because he couldn't handle a drag bunt from this guy, Danny Espinosa, in the first inning. Espinosa dragged one to the right of the mound. Harvey got there, got his glove on it, should have made the play, but didn't, and somehow the scorers saw fit to give Espinosa a hit, and 2 runs ensued. Good changeup by Harvey, and he's ahead 0-2.
The first changeup he's gotten a strike with. Good one by Harp.
Espinosa, Harper, and Escobar for the Nats in the third. With all the offensive injuries they've had, Washington's still 5th in the National League in runs scored. And you know they've missed Worth and Zimmerman for wide swaths of time. It has seemed the one guy that's left the lineup that's had the biggest impact is Denard Span.
Yeah. It tells you how important that leadoff hitter is for every lineup. I mean, they're averaging more than a run a game when Span's in the lineup.
4.6 when he's in the game, 3.5 when they're not. They're 9 games over 500 with Span, 3 games under without him.
Denard Span's one of those players, when you watch him play every day, you want to say a winning player. He's that kind of influence. Just does all the little things that you need. Makes the catch with 2 outs when you got to have it.
Espinosa dumps one into right center for a base hit. So he is 2 for 2. And now Bryce Harper will bat with a man on.
Well, his first time up, you're noticing a lot of teams are trying to pitch around the strike zone to Harper. Why? Well, he doesn't have any real backup. And Harvey went right after him. But after that, tried to go out of the strike zone to get Harper to chase. He did not, and ended up walking him on that fastball down and in.
68 walks now for Harper. He's right at the top of the league. 466 on base percentage, 702 slugging percentage. He has a slugging percentage almost 100 points higher than anybody else in the league. That's how dominant he's been this year.
Well, there's a couple of things that he's doing. One is that his command of the strike zone, he's limited to this little circle that he's swinging at, and that has made a big difference. And he just has just tremendous talent and bat speed. He's still learning and getting better. He's only 22.
Well, it's a tremendous thing for baseball that you have 2 young talents like Bryce Harper and Mike Trout come along at the same time. But it hasn't necessarily been the best thing for Bryce Harper.
That's right. Well, Trout has been able to. He's got a different demeanor than Harper. And I think I left that out. I said he's controlling the strike zone. He's controlling himself, too. You watch him. He doesn't play with that reckless abandon. He's doing things that he can do, but also staying on the field. He's had some injuries the last couple of years. And Trout, so far, is he just grinds out every day. Great seasons.
Harvey behind 3-0 on Harper. And he walked him on 4 pitches this time. So Harper walks for the second time tonight, and now the Nats have 2 men on. Tomorrow, get a preview of Jacob deGrom's return to the mound, plus up-to-the-minute info on the latest MLB trade rumors on Daily News Live, presented by Citi, tomorrow at 5, only on SNY. You know, the latest info on rumors, is that an oxymoron?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know what's interesting with Worthen out to talk to Harvey? You know, you can see some frustration on Harvey's face. And sometimes when you're a starting pitcher and your team is struggling to score runs, you've got to fight that feeling that, boy, you know what? It's going to be a loss. There's no chance we're going to score runs. You've got to fight that feeling.
Well, he's got a big batter to face here. Yunel Escobar, who drove in the first Washington run with a base hit.
Well, you see the defense. Looks like Tejada's going to hold the runner on second. Espinosa close as he backs off. The outfield shifted a little to right field, especially Lagares in center. Murphy way off that line.
Well, that's where Escobar hit it the last time. This time he flies one out to right. Granderson is there, but tagging at second is Espinosa, and he'll move over to third. That's the first out of the inning, but a productive one for Escobar.
Well, Escobar looked like he was bound and determined. That first pitch, if he's got a fastball, he's going to hit it to the right side. And like you said, a productive out. Gets the fastball a little late. And Granderson with the proper play just gets it in as quick as he can to second base to keep the double play in order.
So one out, runners at the corners, and now Clint Robinson. Robinson was at the plate when the Nats stole a run in the first inning. Took a pitch in the dirt. Harper took off for third. Recker threw to second. They got Escobar in the rundown. Tagged Escobar out, but Harper was able to come home and score the second Washington run. Espinosa getting a big lead off third as Robinson swings and misses at the curveball. 0-1.
With this defense that the Mets are playing against Robinson, Murphy swung over way in the hole between third and short. That allows Espinosa to do whatever he wants at third base. Bob Henley, the third base coach, letting him know, get as far as you want.
Well, Murphy's 30 feet off the line. Espinosa can go 30 feet down the line. Robinson hits it out to center. That'll get the run in at least, and Lagares won't catch up to this. It bounds off the wall. Espinosa is in. Harper heading home. He'll score without a throw. It's a 2-run double for Clint Robinson, and the Nationals lead it 4-0.
Well, Gary, you mentioned before that they're still scoring runs in bunches, the Nationals. Well, the reason being is that people off their bench like Robinson coming up with big hits. A hanging curveball by Harvey, and he one-hops the wall by it staying in the ballpark. Espinosa going back to tagging, didn't have to. But Harper, good read here. Harper's got great speed, and the ball staying in the park allows him to score.
Well, we talked about Robinson's power, and that ball just exploded off his bat, just kept on sailing. No chance for Lagares. So Robinson drives in a pair, and it's 4-0 Washington. Now Ian Desmond, who flied out to right his first time up. And he takes a slider in the dirt for ball one.
So you've noticed with Harvey, he's throwing a lot of breaking balls that have been in the dirt. He's throwing a lot of breaking balls that are hanging, the one to Robinson. So his breaking stuff has not been good.
Well, he's already walked 3 batters in this game. That's 12 walks now in his last 15 innings. Consider that before that he had walked only 14 batters in 96 innings. So he is in a stretch where his control has not been as sharp. Ties up Desmond, but he missed inside, and it's 2-0.
Sometimes the worst thing that can happen to a pitcher is you get out in the first inning and you're throwing 100 miles an hour. It tends to, it's intoxicating to throw hard, and sometimes you forget to mix in that breaking stuff.
Two and 0 to Desmond. Well, the other piece is this. You know, you come into this series against the Nationals, who are so banged up, and you see Bryce Harper is having an MVP season, and you say, can't let him beat us. So Harvey's walked him twice. I'm not saying he intended to walk him, but you want to be careful with Harper. And each time they've been able to cash in behind him.
Well, you have to. If you're going to take that strategy, then the other guys are going to have to get out in the game.
Slowly hit. Murphy charging. And the off-balance throw is thrown away, and it goes up into the stands, and that'll bring home a run. Robinson will score. Or are they stopping him at third?
No, he scores.
He's got to score.
Yeah.
Yep. Third base umpire Marty Foster pointed home, then pointed at third, but he definitely is allowed to score on the error, and it's 5-0.
Terry wants to see the ruling on that, though. Because the one thing is that Robinson, because the ground ball was at Murphy, he was stopped at second base. But still, whenever a ball goes in the stands, you usually get that extra base. Are they going to score that? A hit and an error? See how he was stopped? He wasn't going until Murph threw the ball away. The Mets are still stuck in St. Louis, to me, in the 18-inning game. Just not sharp, their pitcher or their defense.
Still waiting to hear whether it's a hit and an error or an error all the way. In any event, Robinson scores. Desmond is on second. 3 runs are home in the inning, and it's 5-0 in favor of the Nats. And keep in mind, the Mets, having played the 18-inning game yesterday, they've got some pitchers who would normally be their long men out of the bullpen who are not available today. Carlos Torres, Sean Gilmartin, both not available to pitch.
Once in AAA. Logan Verrett, who did such a great job.
They do score that a hit for Desmond, I think properly so. No RBI, of course. So the Mets have made 2 errors, both charged to Daniel Murphy, a third that was not charged to Matt Harvey but should have been. And now Matt's behind yet another hitter, 2-0. By the way, Desmond swung at a 3-0 pitch.
Yeah.
Hit that slow ground ball.
Trying to do anything to get out of his slump. Well, unusual for Harvey in the walks.
Well, he walked 5 in 5 innings against the Dodgers. He walked 4 in 7 innings against the Diamondbacks in his last start. Now he's walked 3 in less than 3 innings tonight.
I know that Mel Stottlemyre, when he was the pitching coach for the Mets in the 80s, Gary, he would never tell you out loud. He thought it was a jinx to say, don't let this guy beat you. He didn't want you to have that mindset, You knew who you had to worry about.
2-1 to Lobaton, and that's upstairs. And so Matt now behind yet another hitter, 3-1. And he throws a 3-1 curveball and misses for ball 4. So that's 4 walks now for Harvey in 2 1/3 innings. And after coming out throwing 99 in the first inning, nothing's going right for Matt now.
He's walked Jose Lobaton on a 3-1 curveball, walked Matt Den Decker in his first at bat on a 3-2 breaking ball.
Well, some stirring around in the Mets bullpen as Harvey struggles here in the third. Now he'll face Den Decker for the second time.
Band work by Hansel Robles.
I think there might actually be some throwing work going on in a minute, whether it's Robles or somebody else. Den Decker walked his first time up. First and second, still only 1 out. 3 runs home in the inning, and Den Decker pops one up into shallow left center. Mayberry coming on, and that's the second out. Alex Torres is the first man up in the Mets bullpen.
Well, you know what I find interesting, Gary, is that for good or bad, teams get stuck on the 100-pitch mark, right? So when a guy is going well, they'll go, boy, I got to take him out. He's had 100 pitches. But they'll let a guy under duress throw to 100 pitches when he doesn't have it that day.
And sometimes that's as much about saving the bullpen as anything else.
But, well, removed from Tommy John, you have to be careful in these kind of starts for the young right-hander.
Gio Gonzalez, the 8th man up in the inning, reached on Murphy's error his first time, and he takes a strike. Well, just to review, the Mets got 10 1/3 innings out of their bullpen yesterday. The feeling coming out of that game was that the prime guys, Familia, Mejia, Parnell, would all be available today, but that some of the subsidiary guys, the guys who would pitch in a game like this, Gilmartin and Torres, were not. Murphy stumbles as he feels the grounder and gets the force to end the inning. It has been an adventuresome day at third for Murph, and it's not necessarily a good thing. Gio Gonzalez now has a 5-0 lead as we go to the fourth. That gives us a chance to send it down to Steve Gelbs, whose report tonight is brought to you by StubHub. Steve?
Gary, clearly a very tired Mets group today after the 18-inning game yesterday and the trip out here to Washington. We've seen the ill effects already in the field. But I was talking with Wilmer Flores today before the game. He had some interesting thoughts on how being tired actually could potentially have a beneficial effect on the team at the plate. He said that he's found occasionally when he's more tired, he does better at the plate because you try to do a little bit less, tend to use your hands a little more, which is something that you're supposed to do to begin with when you're hitting. So he thinks that occasionally you hit better when you're more tired. The Mets going to need that theory to pay off pretty big time right here in the next 6 innings.
Well, I don't know about being tired and hitting because I couldn't hit. But I will say that some of my better games was when you were ill.
Right.
It was the funniest thing. You would just kind of simplify things.
I've heard so many players say that, and we saw it the other day in St. Louis with Jason Hayward. Yeah. He was sick as a dog, and he went 5 for 5.
It's a strange thing. I've never really figured it out. I think of the Michael Jordan game, right, in the playoffs.
Flores had a comebacker his first time up. That was a big turning point early in this game. Mets at second and third, nobody out in the first inning against Gonzalez. But Flores couldn't get the run in, and then Mayberry was robbed of a hit on a nice play by Escobar, and it got Gio through the first, and he has kept the Mets off the board to this point. Flores, Mayberry, and Campbell for the Mets in the fourth. And Wilmer pops one up foul. That'll come back out of play. You know that Wilmer Flores was the first player in the major leagues ever with the first name Wilmer. Do you know that in the Nationals dugout there's now another player named Wilmer?
That's right.
Wilmer Defoe, backup infielder. So now there are two.
See, in the old days, they'd just be Will. They wouldn't use their full name. But everyone likes to use their full name. Daniel Murphy, Steven Strasburg.
Escobar fields the grounder and throws out Flores one away. I wonder, with the Flores and Defoe families, people who enjoyed the movie The Maltese Falcon.
That's right. Well, this is the first inning. Mayberry, I thought he took a good at bat. That first pitch fastball right down the chute, but after that had a pretty good eye, and with runners on hit the ball extremely hard. Just a great play by Escobar at third base.
Now John bats with one out and nobody on in the fourth. Gonzalez is settled in to retire 6 in a row, and he gets the curveball over for a strike.
And the other thing in baseball, Gary, they don't really have the great nicknames. When you think of Bryce Harper, last person to win the Triple Crown in the National League, Harper's having those kind of years. Joe Ducky Medwick. They don't have those kind of nicknames anymore.
Well, that whole Cardinals team back in the 30s, the Gas-Hawkins gang, Dizzy Dean,
right.
Pepper Martin, what did they call him? The wild...
Oh, I forget.
The wild horse of the Osage. 1 and 2. Leo DeRocher, Leo the Lip.
That's right. He had plenty of sass for everyone, didn't he?
I think a lot of those nicknames would hurt people's feelings these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But we live in a very PC world, and
I mean, Keith used to have a nickname. We can't use that anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And my nickname when I was with the Mets was RJ. They used to call me RJ because I'm a junior. And when I went and got traded to the Oakland A's, the first person who saw me, ground ball here to Escobar for the second out, called me RJ when I was in the Oakland clubhouse. And I was like, how do they know my nickname is RJ? And I have my shower shoes on. And on your shower shoes, everyone in baseball has them. They have your nickname on them.
So now that people don't have nicknames, what do they say?
I don't know. Like Keith calls me RJ occasionally on the air.
See, now Eric Campbell has a nickname, but he has the same nickname as everybody else who's ever been named Campbell. Right?
In baseball, Dave Campbell, of course.
They're all soup.
Bill Campbell.
Campbell hit a rocket his first time up, and Escobar made a beautiful diving grab to deny him a base hit. Campbell playing first base today, giving Lucas Duda the day off. Early this season, Lucas turned around his inability last year to hit left-handers and was off to a great start, but that has kind of fizzled. So he finds himself on the bench today against the lefty. Juan Lagares would be next. Two. Fouled away.
With this lead now, looks like Gonzalez just going right after the Mets hitters with his fastball.
Do you find you consciously do that as a pitcher?
You don't consciously do it, but what happens, Gary, is anytime you get behind in the count, you might, when you're pitching in a tight game, you might think of an alternative on a 2-1 count. But when you're in a game where it's 5-0, 2-1 is an almost automatic fastball. Just keep it. You don't think of corners, you just think of down. Keep it down, get a ground ball, which Gonzalez has got plenty of them tonight.
3-2 to Campbell, and he pulls that one foul. How many people touched that?
It was a lot of caroms. It was like a rock skipping across the water.
Ball girl finally retrieved and made one fan happy. Nice crowd here in D.C. tonight. Sprinkling of Mets fans. Haven't had much to bark about so far. 8th pitch coming to Campbell, and he walked him. So Gonzalez misses with a 3-2 fastball and issues his second walk of the night. And the Mets have a man on for Juan Lagares. Lagares was the last man to reach before Campbell. He hit a hard ground ball off Escobar's glove for a base hit, then stole second in the second inning. So what did we say? Lagares was the first Met to get 10 bats in a game since a trio in the famous July 4th 85 game.
That's right. Keith had the cycle in that game, right?
Right. So he was 4 for 10. But Wally Backman also had 10 at bats, and Ray Knight had 10 at bats.
How did Wally and Ray do?
Not as well.
No.
Keith would be the first to tell you.
Keith always talks about the 5th hit he should have had. He was robbed.
That's it the other way. A base hit for Lagares. Campbell will go first to third. Played deep by Harper, and Lagares races to second and arrives safely. Ball trickles away, but not far enough for Campbell to make a break. So Lagares is now 2 for 2, his 10th double of the year.
Well, what's interesting about that is that Espinosa's shaded up the middle. So this ball hit right at the second base position, but since he was shaded, he can't make that play. And Harper was playing Lagares on the right field line. That was almost like an old AstroTurf double. Hit so hard it split the outfielders. Campbell could go first to third, and Lagares legs out a double. Nice hitting. Well, Lagares came to play tonight.
So Juan is 2 for 2, second and third, and 2 out. Anthony Recker coming up. And there is nobody throwing in the Mets bullpen. Matt Harvey is on deck. Mets are down 5-0 in this game in the 4th inning. And you would think that you would at least want the option of being able to bat for Harvey in this spot if Recker gets on. But that does not appear to be the case. Recker struck out his first time up. And the backdoor curveball misses, ball 1. The Mets did have Alex Torres up in the last inning when Harvey was struggling.
If Recker walks here, you've got to have something bat for Harvey. Simple as that. I don't care if he hit a home run in his last start. Might have your last shot to get back in this game.
And now it's 2-0, and we might find out. I'm a little bit surprised by this, if only because of Terry's words before the game about how important this series was. Sometimes you have to do things a little differently in games that are of greater importance, particularly when you're this far behind early. Now they're going to walk Recker intentionally, and that will force the Mets' hand. But again, there's nobody up in the bullpen, and there are 2 outs, so they really don't have a choice. They've got to let Harvey back. Very rare, though, that you'd issue an intentional walk, right, with a 5-0 lead, because you're just kind of asking for trouble if you're the Nats. But they see what the circumstance is, that the Mets don't have the option of a pinch hitter, and so they're going to do exactly that, kind of like what Mike Matheny did yesterday.
It's almost like Matt Williams is saying, I'm going to walk Recker here because I want to force the hand of the manager, Collins, get in that bullpen if we have to, or let face Harvey.
So Matt has a chance to do some damage here. He struck out his first time up today. Campbell at third, Lagares at second, Recker at first, and 2 out. Gio Gonzalez retired the first 2 hitters in the inning, but now finds himself in some trouble and having to get out his opposite number.
This really works if Harvey gets a hit.
Sure. And you know that's what Matt's thinking. Sinker by Gio to start him off. Matt has 4 hits this year, including a home run, 3 RBIs. And he goes after a pitch out of the strike zone. It's 0-2.
2 fastballs away, both with some sinking and running action, elude the bat of Harvey.
Now the 0-2. And he loops one into shallow right, base hit. Campbell's in to score. Here comes Lagares. Harvey with a 2-run single. And he gets the Mets on the board. It's now 5-2. Well, Gonzalez kept the ball away from him that entire at bat, and he finally got some wood on it and just enough to dunk it in and drive in 2 runs.
Like I said, Gary, great move if he gets a base hit, but bad pitching by Gio Gonzalez. 2 pitches, a foot off the strike zone that Harvey swung through, and on the 3rd pitch, an 0-2 count, he catches some of the plate, and good hitting by Harvey.
Well, it makes Terry Collins look like a genius for leaving Harvey in to bat for himself, down 5-0, and Matt comes through and gets the Mets back in reach in this game. Now they get the tying run to the plate with their best home run hitter in Curtis Granderson, and conversation at the mound.
And you can get the Gio. Little things that happen like this, making a bad pitch, giving up those couple of runs, they can have lingering effects with Gio Gonzalez.
And he's up to 80 pitches now. Remember, he had 2 out and nobody on in this inning. He walked Eric Campbell, and then Lagares doubled. They pitched around Recker, then intentionally walked him, and Harvey makes them pay for that. Now Granderson the tying run.
The Mets pitchers are coming dangerously close to making the hitters feel very bad about themselves.
Granderson 0 for 2 tonight, and takes the curveball off the plate. 28 pitches in this inning already for Gonzalez, who looked like he was going to have a cruise. And now he's got himself in some big time trouble. And Granderson takes a fastball for a strike. 1-1. Curtis just 3 for 26 in his career against Gio Gonzalez. One of those 3 a home run.
We'll see the defense, not the full shift. You got Desmond a little up the middle, pretty straight away in the outfield.
I guess your point is well taken, Ronnie. At this point, considering the Mets bench, why would you ever bat for the pitcher? I mean, the pitchers hit and the bench doesn't. It's been pretty simple. Granderson hits it sharply, but Espinosa able to knock it down and makes the play to end the inning. Granderson with a bullet. But Gonzalez able to get through the inning with just the 2 runs scoring. Matt Harvey gets himself a little closer. It's 5-2. As the deadline approaches, get up-to-the-minute information on all the latest Mets trade news and rumors on Mets Blog, presented by Citi, part of the SNY.TV blog network. Here is tonight's T-Mobile Data Strong fan photo of the game. Tweet your strongest fan photo to hashtag SNY Data Strong Fan, and you can see yourself in an upcoming broadcast. That is a very cute photo.
Strong. That's a good one.
Really enjoy that one. Third time through the batting order for Matt Harvey. Michael Taylor will lead off in the fourth inning. 5-2 Washington. Harvey driving in a couple of runs and keeping himself around despite a difficult night so far. And Taylor takes the pitch high for ball one. Taylor's taken the call, third strike, and grounded into a fielder's choice. Harvey has walked 4 and struck out only 1 over the first 3 innings. Third straight start he has walked at least 4 batters. Taylor drops down a bunt. Harvey off the mound. This time uses the bare hand, and a nice stretch by Campbell, and they get the out. Harvey was not going to mess around with the glove this time on the bunt attempt.
Well, this is the Harvey you know. I can get around. That's an athlete out there, and falling away still has enough to get Taylor at first base. Fine play.
Now, is there something in the scouting report that says bunt on Harvey?
I don't know. Both Espinosa, who got a gift hit, and Taylor now. You know, he's one of the better fielding pitchers, even though he made a mistake in the first.
Mets will have their best fielding pitcher going tomorrow night. That's Jacob DeGrom. Gio getting debriefed on the bench as Espinosa fouls one back.
I heard DeGrom was pretty good in the All-Star game, Gary. There's Gio. Talked about his angry side.
Well, that was an inning that should have been easy for him, and he turned it into a hard one. And might have cost himself down the road by jacking up his pitch count. He's at 84 through 4 now.
That's Steve McCaddy, the pitching coach, trying to calm him down.
Espinosa's 2 for 2 today. And the bunt single, and then hit a hard base hit into right center and scored a run each time. Bryce Harper on deck. You know, we were talking at the outset of our broadcast tonight about that 18-inning win yesterday and the kind of emotional reaction that a team can have, and the Mets really celebrated that win yesterday. Sometimes after you play a long game like that, everybody kind of slogs into the clubhouse and it's like a relief, but that's not the way the Mets treated it. They treated it like it was a big deal that they finally won that game in 18 innings.
Well, when you beat a team like St. Louis that has 58 wins, they're so good at home. You've lost the first 2 games of the series. You're just trying to get out of there with a win and some momentum to get you into this series.
So the question is, now you fall behind in this game and you play very poorly the first couple of innings in a lot of different standpoints. Can the memory of yesterday help you now try and fight the way out of this hole today?
I think it already has in some way when you think about it.
Murphy back into foul ground and catches the pop-up from Espinosa for the second out.
I mean, when you think about it, Gary, you got a pitcher on the mound who's struggled so far. It's given up 5 runs, but he gives the team life with a base hit that drives in a couple. So now this game, instead of being up, they got 5 runs. No chance with the Mets offense the way it's been. They have no chance of coming back in this game. It gives you a little light, and it could be one of those special games that if you get the Gio at some point, you say, hey, we won 18 innings yesterday. When we're down 5, we can win a game. You know, those are the kind of things you try to get going in your clubhouse.
Let's see how Harvey approaches Harper here. He walked him his first 2 times up, each time with men on base. Here with the bases empty, he throws a fastball for a strike. Harper's now drawn 69 walks this year. Gets under this one to right field, and Granderson has an easy play. And Matt Harvey has himself his first 1-2-3 inning of the night. 9-pitch inning for Matt. Still 5-2 Washington. All-Star break Friday night to play the Dodgers here, and well, the lights went out once, twice, 3 times the lights went out.
You know, it's interesting. I heard the backstory to this. Matt Williams and Don Mattingly got together with the umpires after the second one and said to them, so listen, if it happens again, this is really kind of lousing up our pitching. Let's just call it off if it happens again when it happened. So the managers helped that game be called.
It was suspended after 5 innings. They completed it on Saturday. Ruben Tejada leads off. It's one in the hole, a base hit. So Ruben continues to hit the ball well. He now has an 8-game hitting streak, and the Mets get the leadoff man on against Gio in the 5th inning.
Well, defensively against Tejada, a little shaded up the middle. Well, not a lot, but the third baseman in is always the key against Tejada because they play him like he's got speed. He doesn't, and he finds a hole.
Well, so the momentum starting to shift a little in this game. Mets got 2 runs in the 4th. Harvey had a shutdown inning. Now a leadoff hit for Tejada. Murphy is 1 for 2, a double and a comebacker, and he hits one in the air to center field. Pretty well hit, but playable for Taylor. He goes back onto the warning track to get it for a long first out. Ball carried awfully well.
Yeah, this hot, humid weather here at Nationals Park, the ball will carry. That's 3 balls hit right on the nose by Murphy.
So 1 out and 1 on. Now Wilmer Flores, who has hit 2 ground ball outs, 1 back to the mound and 1 to third. Looking back to a curve for a strike. So the Nats were able to win that suspended game. That was the Dendecker home run.
Yes.
Then they got shut out by Kershaw through 8 innings.
14 Ks.
And then they got shut out by Greinke through 8 innings.
11 Ks. I saw Kershaw's game. It's as good as I've ever seen him, and his curveball, which is unhittable most nights, was as good as I've ever seen it.
Kershaw in that game Saturday had 30 swings and misses. 101 pitches, 30 swings and misses. The most swings and misses for anybody in the last 7 years.
It's a good month for most pitchers.
Hit the other way, a base hit for Flores. Tejada pulls in at second. So a hanging curve on 0-2, and Flores able to hit it past Robinson, and the Mets have 2 men on.
And I mentioned before the game that hitters are hitting about 60-70 points higher against that curveball of Gonzalez this year. And nice job by Flores of going the other way, waiting on it and driving it past Robinson.
So the Mets get the tying run to bat here in the 5th. John Mayberry will step in. Mayberry had a couple in scoring position with 2 out in the 1st. Hit a shot over the third base bag, and Escobar made a nice play and threw him out. So the Mets showing some fight in this game that they once trailed 5-0. Loaded the bases. Harvey drove in a pair in the 4th. Now they've got 2 on in the 5th. No action in the Nats bullpen. The 90th pitch of the night from Gio Gonzalez, in for a strike. Washington made a move with their bullpen today. They sent Blake Trinan down and called up a rookie, Abel De Los Santos.
This might be a 5 and fly type of game for Gonzalez if he can get through 5.
Well, it looked like he had found his stride after getting out of a jam in the 1st inning, a couple of hard hit balls in the 2nd. He retired 7 in a row, had 2 out and nobody on in the 4th, but he's only gotten 2 outs since. 6 of the last 8 hitters have reached base. Mayberry hits one in the air to shallow right, and on comes Harper and puts it away for the 2nd out. So now 2 out and 2 on. It's left to Eric Campbell. Campbell's had a good day at the plate so far. He had a bullet And Escobar robbed him of a hit in the second, and then he drew a walk and scored the first Met run in the fourth. Campbell had an interesting day yesterday. Came off the bench in the ninth inning, wound up getting 6 plate appearances.
Wow.
2 walks and the suicide squeeze in the 18th inning that gave the Mets their insurance run. Now, if he'd only learned not to look over his shoulder running to first base, he might have had a hit.
That's right.
On that suicide squeeze. Never look back. Someone might be gaining on you.
That's right.
Satchel Paige has said that.
That's right. You know, what's interesting about this game is that really Gio's 1 hit away, if Campbell can get it, from just totally imploding. And the reason I say that, you got to put this year into perspective for Gio. He's only got 6 wins. 5 of them, the bullpen has surrendered the lead when he had the lead. He's not got a lot of run support, and here he gets it. You're supposed to win these games, and 1 more hit puts him in harm's way.
Campbell takes a strike. Tanner Roark is up in the bullpen for the Nationals.
$15-game winner last year. He's their long man. Another visit by Lobaton out to Gonzalez.
Long man and swing man, and it's been tough for Roark this year, moving back and forth. Well, there are the numbers for Nationals pitchers against the Mets coming into tonight. Presented by DraftKings. Play daily fantasy baseball for free on DraftKings.com. Enter promo code NYM for free entry.
Well, they've lived up to their billing against Mets hitters so far.
Change up in the dirt. Ball and a strike. 94 pitches now for Gio. Threw 106 in his last start. That was 10 days ago against the Orioles. He went 6 innings in that game, gave up just 1 run. One coming, and Campbell hits it in the air to right center, chasing Taylor back deep in the gap. Taylor jumping and makes the catch. He didn't get a great break on that ball, but Taylor's got closing speed. And he takes an extra base hit away from Eric Campbell with a very nice catch. Boy, did Gio Gonzalez need that.
Ooh.
Could have been 5-4, but for Michael Taylor.
Well, he did not get a great jump, but watch the angle he takes, right directly where the ball lands, and just catches that in the palm of his glove. It almost bounces out, but he just snares it with the web at the last second. I'd do the same thing if I were Eric Campbell, too, with that helmet.
He's been robbed twice in this game, once by Escobar and now by Taylor. Escobar leads off in the home fifth inning and grounds one down to Murphy, who gives ground and makes the throw on target. One pitch and one out for Matt Harvey in the bottom of the fifth. Glenn Robinson, who has the biggest hit in this game for the Nationals, a two-run double to deep left center in the third. Ryan Zimmerman made the transition to first base this year, but he has the plantar fasciitis. He's begun his rehab assignment, but the thing about that plantar fasciitis, you just never know if it's going to come back.
You're right.
Mark McGwire had trouble with that for years at the beginning of his career.
I remember by the time I got there, he traded in '91. He had that great rookie year, '87, when he had 49 home runs.
Robinson out to right center, but Granderson cuts over. 2 out. Follow the Mets wherever you are with MLB.com at Bat, the #1 app for live baseball. At Bat is up to the moment at any moment with in-game highlights, look-ins, replay reviews, radio broadcasts, StatCast, and more. Get MLB.com at Bat for your smartphone or tablet.
But in '91, when I got there, Gary, '91 and '92, he really suffered from it. In fact, just barely hit over 200, I believe, in '91.
There's Ian Desmond. An infield hit his last time up. 1 for 2. That infield hit, it was not hit hard at all. Snapped an 0 for 17 stretch for Desmond, and with his year going the way it's going, he'll take hits any way he can.
Harvey going to some more breaking balls in this inning. He got Escobar on a first pitch slider to start this at bat, then a changeup.
Past Harvey, Flores on the backhand, and the throw handled by Campbell, and it's a 1-2-3 inning. 8 in a row now retired by Harvey after 5-2 Nats. You know what momentous thing happened in the first inning of that game? Nick Markakis hit a home run.
Oh, wow.
First home run of the season on July 20th.
He's been batting cleanup for them almost all year, right?
I mean, he's had a good year. He gets on base, but a guy who you normally expect is going to hit 20, 25 home runs. First home run of the year.
You know, the issue for them is now Freddie Freeman's been out a long time. Those wrist injuries are tricky.
Juan Lagares had a good day. Single and a double. Swing and a miss at a changeup, 0-2. Well, Freddie, I just read today, is getting close to a rehab assignment.
Okay.
And they're hoping he'll be back around the 1st of August. But that's by no means guaranteed. 1-2 to Lagares. Anthony Recker on deck. Then Matt Harvey. And there's no action in the Mets bullpen. So it looks like Harvey's going to get another at bat. That worked out fine the last time.
Get a couple on for him.
And Matt has kicked it in gear since that at bat. He hasn't allowed another base runner. Down to third, and Escobar's got it and throws out Lagares one away. Yeah, not much question he's going to bat again. He's thrown 80 pitches now, and he's in a closer contest than he was back in the 4th inning when he was allowed to bat.
You know, Gary, you can learn a lot about a pitcher when he's in a game like this because you see if there's any quit in him, and obviously none in Matt.
Recker has struck out and been intentionally walked in his return to the Mets. First game for New York since June the 12th. Just brought Johnny Manel here, hoping that his left-handed bat could spark them off the bench. It didn't work out that way, so Recker's back now. Matt Thornton strolling around in the Nats bullpen. He's been really good.
Yes, he has.
You know, you think about those older left-handers in the bullpen, the guys who drop their arms down to the side and start being specialists. Not Thornton.
He still throws 95 plus. Yeah, like Jeremy Affeldt, guys like that.
Bob McClure late in his career, right? Jesse Orosco pitched till he was 150.
That's right. J.O. Probably could still pitch.
Just one more slider. Recker pops one into shallow right. And Harper coming on to get it. 2 out. Now Harvey. That has driven in the 2 Met runs today with a single to right field with the bases loaded in the 4th. His 4th and 5th runs batted into the year.
That's the pitch that Gio wanted to throw when Matt got the hit on that 0-2 count. That one right there.
Didn't get it quite that far away. Was that Calvin Coolidge?
That was Silent Cal.
The newest of the running presidents. Oh, there's Harvey's hit. Just over the outstretched arm of Espinosa and in front of Harper. Not well struck, but very effective. So what do they have? 6 racing presidents now?
Yes.
I wonder how they decided on Cal.
I don't know why. I'm glad they have the Yaley Taft in there.
They could have added William Henry Harrison, but he wouldn't last very long in those longer races.
Right.
Harvey went around for strike 3. 4th strikeout for Gonzalez. He has a 1-2-3 top of the 6th. play the Dodgers. Stay after the game for a special post-game concert featuring Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Hart, the Wilson sisters.
There we go.
Can't beat that. Post-game concert is included in the price of your ticket, and it's all presented by Pepsi. Purchase tickets online at Mets.com/concerts.
Ann and Nancy, right?
Yep.
They're great.
They really are.
They're great.
Matt Thornton up in the bullpen for the Nats. Gio Gonzalez done. He got the handshakes when he came in after the last half inning. 107 pitches. Was able to persevere through some rough spots. The aforementioned handshakes, back slaps, high fives, and the like. They don't have a group hug like the Cardinals did with Adam Wainwright.
Well, I mean, they got 58 wins. They lead the league in hugs.
Even the guy who hasn't played. Jose Lobaton leads off in the home sixth. Lobaton has grounded out and walked 0 for 1. Harvey's retired 8 in a row since that walk to Lobaton. Harvey gave up 2 runs in the first, fueled by his inability to field a bunt, and then gave up 3 in the third. The last one unearned, the result of Daniel Murphy's throwing error. So 5 runs against him, but it could easily be only 2 earned runs if play had been scored differently. Nonetheless, he has walked 4 batters, but he has settled into a nice groove since he drove in a couple of runs with his bat.
What did I say? 9 days since he pitched last. Came out with not great control, but it looked like he's found it. He threw hard.
Certainly had great velocity early in the game.
Like that curveball right there. That's the kind of curveball he's thrown most of the night. It just isn't giving him a chance to break, hanging in the upper part of the strike zone. That's the pitch that Clint Robinson hit for that big double.
Lobaton swings through the 97-mile-an-hour fastball, 2-2. Jose Lobaton started out in San Diego, went to Tampa Bay. Lifetime .228 hitter, always known more for his defense than his bat. Matt Dendecker on deck. Saying Matt Dendecker on deck always sounds redundant.
It does.
3-2 now to Lobaton.
That was supposed to be a backdoor slider that stayed upstairs, frustrating Matt Harvey. See where Anthony Recker's sitting? It's supposed to be a nice tight little slider on that outside part. Just backed up on him.
3-2 to Lobaton. And he foul tips it. Recker grabs it, and that's a strikeout for Harvey. Just his second strikeout of the night.
Well, when you miss with a couple breaking pitches and the count goes to 3-2, you just throw it as hard as you can and hope the hitter doesn't make contact. And Lobaton did not. You see the back of Harvey's jersey. You see his numbers all saturated with sweat.
Well, it was 88 degrees and humid at game time. It's cooled off maybe a couple of degrees since. It's been a strenuous night for Matt as Dendecker steps in. First pitch breaking ball, 0-1. Wilmer Defoe is out on deck to bat for Gio Gonzalez. Defoe for Gio. Dendecker has walked and flied out tonight, 0 for 1. And he hits the comebacker. 2 out. That's 10 in a row now for Harvey. And now it's Defoe, the second Wilmer in Major League history. Defoe's had 7 at-bats with the Nats this year. He's a switch hitter, will bat left-handed against Harvey.
He's got real good speed. Likes to bunt for base hits. I don't think he'll do that here with 2 outs.
And Harvey handles another comebacker. That's the 11 in a row retired by Harvey. He's pitching like he's just getting started. We head to the 7th. Nats go to the bullpen. Thornton coming in with Washington up 5-2. Your People's United Bank starting pitchers. Matt Harvey got off to a difficult start, but he has kicked it in gear. Gio Gonzalez worked out of a couple of jams. The only 2 runs he gave up were driven in by Harvey. And now Gonzalez gives way to Matt Thornton, and the 38-year-old lefty will face the top of the order in the 7th.
Well, remember, he did most of his great work for the Chicago White Sox. Then he was sent to the New York Yankees. He was put on waivers by the Yankees. Since then, in Washington, 50 games and a 1.38 ERA. He has been outstanding.
Granderson, Tejada, and Murphy to face Thornton in the 7th. Mets 2 runs, 6 hits. Nationals 5 runs, 5 hits. Granderson's had plenty of at-bats, little success against Thornton, just 4 for 27 against him. Curtis 0 for 3 tonight. And takes the slider off the plate, a ball and a strike. So Gonzalez went 6, allowed 2 runs, 6 hits, 3 walks, 1 intentional, 4 strikeouts, 107 pitches, and a chance for his 7th win.
Thornton, when he was with the White Sox, you could count on him to throw 95% fastballs, through 97, 98 miles an hour. He still throws 94, 95, but you see a lot more cutters and sliders.
He's one of those hard-throwing relievers who's never really had a chance to be a closer. You know, he's saved some games here and there, but he's never been anybody's full-time closer, even when he was throwing 98 for the White Sox.
That's right.
Two to Granderson, and the fastball up and in, and a full count to Curtis. Thornton has never been a guy who walks a lot of hitters. Only 5 walks this season. Granderson pops one straight up. Espinosa staggering, but stays with it for the first out. Always good to use 2 hands. Keith would be proud.
I always call those, they're called big league pop-ups when you see something like that. The reason they're called that, even big leaguers get a little nervous when they're up that high.
It's like A-Rod's pop-up?
Yeah, that one.
1 out. Here's Ruben Tejada. Another good night at the plate for Ruben. A walk and a single. He's now hit in 8 straight games.
I know it's a low light, but we've been together for 10 years. They should have that as one of our highlights, just because how hard I smashed the desk when he dropped it.
Did you break anything?
I don't know what happened. Sometimes you have a flashback to when you were a player, and that was one of them.
The thing about it is, and I don't know if you had this feeling when the ball was in the air, you kind of saw it coming.
Yeah. Well, Keith, you could almost hear, if you replay it, Keith saying like almost "oh no" before the ball got to his glove.
Once Louis started to backpedal, it was all over. Tejada nubs one down to first. Easy for Robinson for the 2nd out.
And always lost on that play, because you don't think of it this way, is that Teixeira on a pop-up running as hard as he ever could, and that's the reason he scored.
From first base.
From first base.
By the way, how about Mark Teixeira's renaissance this year? Did you see that coming?
No, I did not. It's almost, it gets overshadowed because of the way Alex has played, Alex Rodriguez, and no one expected that to happen. But I thought the comments this winter from Mark were, I found them initially bizarre, but then he's put him into action, and he said, I've given a lot of thought to this. I don't care about the shift. I'm sick about the shift. I'm going to hit it over the shift. And that's what he's done.
It might not work if he played in a different ballpark.
That's right.
But in that ballpark, that strategy works.
Yes, it does.
If he were playing here in Washington, or if he were playing at Citi Field,
yeah,
he might not be able to take that kind of attitude. Murphy's hit the ball hard all night. He doubled down the right field line, and a hard comebacker to Gonzalez, and then hit one deep to center field that Taylor caught on the warning track. One two from Thornton, and he bounces a slider. 2-2. Tanner Roark staying busy in the Nats bullpen with right-hand hitters to follow. And Murphy grounds one for Espinosa. Nice easy hop. And that retires the side. 1-2-3 inning from Matt Thornton in the top of the 7th. As Mr. Lincoln looks on. He's always deep in thought. The only 2 players to win more than 10 Gold Gloves as an outfielder. Now I know it's not Jake Elmore.
He told me about the Elmore trivia question.
Well, Matt Harvey has had a very interesting night.
Yeah.
Throwing 99 miles an hour in the first when he gave up 2 runs. Gave up 3 more runs in the third. Drove in a couple of runs with a base hit. And now he's retired 11 in a row.
Yeah, it's almost like he's had 2 different, completely different games.
4th time through the batting order now. Michael Taylor, who's 0 for 3, tried to bunt his way on his last time up, and Harvey threw him out. And he lines this one right at Flores, who drops it, but has plenty of time to recover and throw out Taylor.
And oh, by the way, Harvey's the only guy that's driven in. He's been in the Mets offense, too.
So 12 in a row for Harvey, and now Danny Espinosa, who laid down the fateful bunt in the first inning that Harvey could not handle and put him in harm's way early. Well, Alex Torres was up in the bullpen as early as the 3rd inning, and he's up again here in the 7th. They're not going to bring him in to face Harper, are they?
I mean, you would hope that you give Harvey a chance to get through the seven innings.
Well, not just that, but I mean, how many times can you bring Alex Torres in to face a left-hand hitter before you realize that's just not who he is? Espinosa gets his feet out of the way. 2-0.
I always find it interesting is that Ricky Bonas in the bullpen, he always waves the white towel when the reliever's ready. That is counterintuitive, isn't it?
Surrender?
Right.
Yeah. I don't think he's thought that through.
No.
Maybe get a flag or something. A Mets flag.
Like the flag in a mailbox. Just put it up when the guy's ready. You know, it's interesting that, you know, all your starts are kind of interrelated during the course of the year. You see Garrett and Terry going over the lineup. But Matt started off not so well in this game, but retiring all these hitters in a row should serve him well for his next start.
Tejada lays out, gets up, and throws out Espinosa. Beautiful play, Ruben Tejada.
Well, that's a big league play right there. Not only being able to get to it, but see how quickly he gets up? That's the one thing that Wilmer always lacked at shortstop. He could get to that ball, but he couldn't get up as quick as Tejada does to make that play.
Espinosa says safe. McClinsky says out, and it really wasn't that close. So with some help from Tejada, Harvey's retired 13 in a row. And now he'll take on Bryce Harper with 2 out and nobody on. Harper's walked twice, scored 2 runs, flat out to right his last time up. It was very interesting. Right before that pitch was thrown, Wilmer Flores, who was playing over in the hole, moved a little closer to the middle against Harper as the play at first.
Good job by Espinosa. If you're out there, you want to always step on the front of that bag. That's the quickest way there, but not quick enough to get a hit. Yeah, not only that, look how deep he's playing. He's 2 or 3 steps back on the grass also. So not swung over the pole, but deep.
I just think it's interesting that you got a guy like Harper, and so many of these left-hand hitters are being played as dead pull hitters, but he's proven this year that he's not that. He's a guy who can use the whole field.
Well, he's in one of those modes where he's just trying to hit a homer here, or it feels like it.
And a good-looking curve from Harvey, one of the best ones he's thrown tonight.
Good curveball, good spin.
One-two to Harper. And he pops it foul. Harper still looking for his first ever hit against Harvey, 0 for 13.
Well, remember after the first start Harvey had against Washington this year, he was so effusive in his praise of Harvey. I thought too effusive to me. I thought he was trying to set Harvey up a little bit.
Is there such a thing? One-two. Got him looking. Fastball on the inside at 98. Now that might be the coda for Harvey tonight. He finishes extremely strong. 14 in a row retired. We go to the 8th. Casey Jansen will come on in relief for the Nats.
A bundle of energy on the mound is Jansen, the veteran right-hander. This is 410th game, 389 with Toronto.
Wilmer Flores leading off in the 8th inning, and he pops one foul. Jansen was on the disabled list first part of the year, and the Nats have to cobble together that 8th inning. Matt Harvey may not be done. 99 pitches in 7 innings, retired the last 14. You might send him back out there for the bottom of the 8th. Flores shoots one the other way. Harper coming on, and he makes a nice sliding catch. Harper was playing pretty shallow, and it served him well. And he makes a beautiful sliding play to rob Flores.
Well, the Mets defense has not been great tonight, and the the Nats defense has been fantastic. The catch by Taylor, Escobar early, and now Harper. Aggressive play to start this inning.
He's not doing much wrong these days, is he? Here's Mayberry, who's 0 for 3. He was victimized by Escobar back in the 1st inning. And Jansen bounces the breaking ball. Casey Jansen is a kitchen sink kind of guy.
Yeah.
Late inning reliever who doesn't throw very hard.
He's got more insides than he does stuff on the outside. He's a gamer.
It's been 8 seasons with Toronto. Now in just his 21st game with the Nats. Eric Campbell on deck. Mayberry pops it up. Coming back is Lobaton. Right near the railing, and a nice play by Lobaton. Wow. Boy, the Nats played some defense tonight. Right at the corner where the concrete ends. And he got the green metal railing, and he was able to grab it and hang on.
And he caught it with that underhand with the glove. An amazing catch as he works his way around the screen. And what made it even doubly better is not only the catch that he takes away from the fan here, but the backswing of Mayberry hit him on top of the head before he went for that baseball.
That was just a splendid play.
Watch his backswing, Gary. So this what makes it tough. Long backswing, pop right in the head, and then he goes and makes the play.
Completely ignored it like it never happened. Here's Eric Campbell, who's been robbed twice tonight. Once by Escobar and once by Taylor. We'll keep the lefty Felipe Rivero ready in the bullpen. Let's have a left-handed bench of Duda and Nieuwenhuis tonight. Campbell bloops one behind first base. That's going to fall in for a base hit. So he hit 2 balls hard that got caught, and now he gets the obverse, the bloop hit that falls in. Tomorrow night, game 2 of the series, Jacob deGrom for the Mets. Young right-hander Joe Ross, that's Tyson Ross's younger brother, pitching for the Nationals. 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
The Rosses come out of the womb throwing sliders. Joe Ross has got a great one too, like his brother.
So the Mets have their 7th hit of the night, and now Juan Lagares, who has 2 of them, a single and a double.
You know, you're just so used in these kind of games for the Nationals in the 8th inning with a 3-run lead, seeing Mr. Clippard when he used to come in all the time, but traded for Yunel Escobar this winter.
Clippard now in Oakland, closing games. Lagares at the plate. Campbell at first with 2 out. Now Anthony Recker is on deck, but if Lagares gets on, you got to send up Duda or Nieuwenhuis, don't you?
You got to send up someone who can hit the ball at the ballpark. Not that Recker can't.
Not as likely against a right-hander. Now they do have the lefty Felipe Rivero up in the bullpen, and if you put up Duda or Nieuwenhuis, you'd probably see him. And then you could go to Plawecki or Kadire.
Well, I think, that's where you got to look, I think. Do you like the matchup of Recker against Jansen, or do you want Duda to come up and have to use them and then go to Kadire because they bring in the left-hander? I don't know.
You could send up Nieuwenhuis and save Duda.
That's right.
To bat for the pitcher. There is Rivero, who's ready to go. Well, all of that is up to Lagares to get on, and otherwise it's a moot point.
Jansen doesn't throw very hard, but he likes to pitch the right-handers in. He's throwing a lot of fastballs in to set up that slider away.
Jansen now 33 years old, a product of UCLA. Campbell at first and 2 out. And the curveball in the dirt. 1-2.
Boy, there's been a lot of pitchers from UCLA of recent note, right? Garrett Cole, Trevor Bauer.
Mets, Eric Goodell.
That's right.
Who, by the way, is on the mend. Starting to throw off the mound and hoping to come back from elbow problems. He was very good for the Mets earlier this year. Time asked for by Lagares.
Well, considering that the bullpen for the Mets has kind of been a no-name bullpen all season long, they've done an outstanding job, highlighted, of course, by their closer.
Well, they're 4th in the major leagues in bullpen ERA, which is stunning. 1-2, and Lagares fouls back that cutter. Familia had a rare bump in the road yesterday. Blew just his 3rd save of the year when he gave up the Colton Wong home run, but then, after pitching himself into further trouble, was able to work his way out of it and keep the Mets alive in that game. And that was the only run that the bullpen allowed in 10 1/3 innings. Well, there's nobody up in the Mets bullpen, so it does appear Harvey's going to get the next inning. 1-2, and Lagares stops the swing in time. The Nats were coming off the field, but Mike McClinsky said he didn't swing.
Well, I don't think he swung later either, but it just looked bad on that fastball in that he had a late reaction to. You're right. Jansen was halfway off the field.
Desmond was running in. Escobar was running in. This will be the 7th pitch of the at-bat to Lagares. And he hits one off Jansen toward the middle. Espinosa gets the flip over to Desmond, and they force Campbell to end the inning. Scored 1-4-6, deflected by Jansen, and they get the 3rd out of the inning. Matt Harvey go back to the mat for the bottom of the 8th. Coming up tonight after the postgame show, it's Geico Sports Night. Chris Carlin. We haven't had a good Chris Carlin tweet in a long time. So
yes.
How do the Giants react to JPP's finger? What else can you do for 5 hours and 55 minutes other than play 18 innings of baseball? Slow roasted pork shoulder.
He must be a crock pot guy.
Could be spit.
There you go.
Let's answer our Verizon trivia question. 2 players to win 10 Gold Gloves as an outfielder. Ooh, both good.
Wow. You know, what's interesting is that both players certainly knew about in my childhood, but never really got to see them play, you know?
Well, we got deked. Matt Harvey done for the night, and Alex Torres will come in to play the bottom of the 8th.
Well, this is one of those innings for Torres who has struggled lately where he's got to try to find it. And that would be throwing strikes, getting ahead of hitters.
Last pitch Saturday night in St. Louis. Worked an inning, gave up 4 runs. The last 3 on a Randall Grichuk 3-run homer. Yunel Escobar will lead off in the bottom of the 8th. Escobar singled back in the first to drive in the first run of this night. Since then, he's flied out and grounded out 1 for 3. And first pitch fastball swung and foul tipped.
How about Randall Grichuk? He probably had the worst night any hitter's ever had against Mets pitching this year. And then after that, you can't get him out.
He had that 0 for 6, 5 strikeout performance in the 14-inning game in New York. Then he had 5 extra base hits the next 2 games. Then he had the 2 home run, 6 RBI game Saturday night.
That's right.
He's a good player,
yeah,
by the way.
Is.
He's gonna be a star.
Did you see that they're bringing up? I think they called up today Stephen Piscotty, who's another one of their high draft picks, the Stanford Cardinal.
We've seen him a lot the last couple of spring trainings. Popped up. Campbell makes the call. Staggers and dives and has it. Wow. Well, we saw Espinosa stagger under one and catch it with 2 hands. This one required a little more degree of effort.
Well, it's obvious that how the wind was blowing when Espinosa had to go towards second when the ball got up. So if he gets above the stadium here, obviously it's being pushed towards second base. And it almost cost Campbell.
Good thing he had the extra long glove.
Now, my feeling is that Wilmer has more experience. He should really call that and take that play.
And he has a better angle to it, too. So 1 difficult out and nobody on. Now Clint Robinson, who had a 2-run double back in the 3rd against Matt Harvey, and he grounds this one toward the middle, and that'll sneak through for a base hit. So Robinson has his 2nd hit of the night. That's the first hit for the Nats since the 3rd inning. Harvey retired his last 14 batters.
It's almost uncanny that Alex Torres, the left-hander, just cannot get left-handers out. I mean, that wasn't a hard hit ball, but well placed.
Now Ian Desmond, 1 for 3, an infield hit in the 3rd. Nationals have just 6 hits tonight. They were able to steal a run in the 1st inning after a play not made. They got an unearned run in the 3rd. Really the biggest hit of the night by far was Robinson's 2-run double that made it 4-0. And then on the other side, the Mets have scored just 2 runs. Harvey drove them in, but the Nats have made a half-dozen glorious defensive plays to help their pitchers. Fly ball deep right center. Back in the gap goes Lagares. Looks up and it's out of here. Ian Desmond, an opposite field 2-run homer. The struggling Desmond hits his 8th home run of the year to tack on for the Nats. It's now 7-2.
Well, your team is within earshot of these Nationals, and Torres had to come in and throw a 0, and he couldn't. Desmond, who's been struggling, like you said, Gary, could always count on him for 20-plus home runs, driving in a lot of runs. That looks like the old Ian Desmond right there.
Alex has heard that sound far too often. That's the 6th home run he's allowed in just 30 innings. Piled out on top of all the walks, and he has just not been effective. Now Jose Lobaton takes high. Lobaton is grounded out, walked and struck out 0 for 2. Turns around about right-handed for the first time tonight. He's had only 8 right-handed at bats this year. And there's the good changeup by Torres, 1-1. Well, the Nats have had the Mets number over the last few seasons. They were 15-4 against the Mets last year. A win tonight, they'll be 5-3 against the Mets this season. And that's a pattern that the Mets cannot afford to allow to continue if they have any designs on winning this division. You know, they've already put themselves behind the 8 ball in the wild card race by getting swept in the season series by the Cubs, the team that they're chasing for that second wild card. They lost all 7 meetings with Chicago.
And the Cubs only have 1 more win than the Mets.
Strike 3 called. Lobaton caught looking for the second out.
Oh, fastball in, just catches the knees.
So 2 out now. Matt Dendecker will face the left-hander. Matt has walked, flied out, and hit a comebacker 0 for 2. Harvey went 7, allowed 5 runs, 4 of them earned on 5 hits, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. A rare time in his career he walked more than he struck out. 99 pitches for Matt, who started poorly but retired his last 14. Drew Storen is up in the Nats bullpen. He was up when it was a 3-run game, and he's remained up now that it is no longer a save situation. Storen has had a very good year for the Nats.
Well, he has. He's been lights out for them since he was drafted in the first round. The problem has been in the postseason he has struggled.
Well, and also the aftermath after the 2012 meltdown.
You're right, Gary.
Where he wound up in the minor leagues the next year because it just seemed to have a carryover after they lost to St. Louis.
Well, I think what happened is a couple things. One, he had to revamp his mechanics. Remember, they signed Soriano after that year, which pushed him to the 7th inning role because they still had Clippard. And I think he lost his confidence. He's got it back now.
Doesn't have quite that same leg kick that he used to, and he's been really good at the back of that Nats bullpen. 1-2 to Dendecker with 2 out and nobody on. Dan Uggla on deck. He'll pinch hit if Dendecker keeps the inning going. Here's Uggla.
The Mets have had so many battles with Dan Uggla. Just surprising to see him as a bench player now.
Well, it's interesting, you know, with all the injuries both these teams have had, you've got players on both benches who might not otherwise be there. But you look at the Nats bench, and it's much more of a veteran group. Will pop up in the middle of the infield, and Torres will take it himself to end the inning. But a 2-run homer by Ian Desmond expands the Nationals' lead. 7-2 Washington as we go to the ninth. Mets box score is brought to you by Heineken. Matt Harvey has the only 2 RBIs for the Mets tonight. Mets have 7 hits, and they've been robbed of a half dozen others by some tremendous Nationals defense. And now Drew Storen will try and get the final 3 outs.
You know, he's their closer, but I like this, Gary. I like if you get your closer up, you bring him in. No false starts. So Storen in, even though 5-run lead for the Nats.
Storen making his 2nd appearance since the All-Star break. Kirk Neuenhuis will bat for Anthony Recker, leading off in the 9th inning. Neuenhuis had a pinch hit double in the game yesterday in St. Louis in the 12th inning. And he takes the off-speed pitch from Storen away for ball 1. Lucas Duda on deck to bat for Alex Torres, and then Curtis Granderson. So 3 left-hand hitters for Storen to contend with in the 9th. I agree about getting the closer in once you've gotten him up, but you never know how these closers are going to fare in these non-save situations.
Hey, listen, I played with Dennis Eckersley. You got to consider him one of the best closers of all time, right? When he came in and it wasn't a closing situation, he never, or it seemed like he never had a good outing.
The classic to me was Armando Benitez. Because if you brought Benitez in with a 4-run lead, he wouldn't just have a bad outing. He'd lose the game.
Well, they're adrenaline junkies, right? These guys that close games. So they sometimes need that extra, well, dare I say the word, juice.
I'm sure you'll find a different word. 2-2 now. Nice. Well, we saw Lance Lynn start for the Cardinals Friday night. His high school teammate, Drew Storen. They were teammates in Brownsburg, Indiana.
Wow.
It's a pretty good staff.
A lot of teenagers taking offers against that staff.
Storen went on from there to Stanford. He was the other first-round draft pick for the Nats in 2009 after they took Strasburg. number 1. They got Storen 10th overall pick in that draft. Strasburg, by the way, is on the mend. He's coming back from an oblique injury. And Neuenhuis foul tips it. It's held by Lobaton, and that's the first out of the night.
Well, that's what you look for, isn't it, Gary? This little cutter by Storen is when you draft people that they're able to at some point help you. Storen has been a big part of this team. Strasburg, of course, one of their starting pitchers, although hurt. Bryce Harper, Michael Taylor, Ian Desmond was drafted by the Expos.
Now Duda will pinch hit. Lucas had himself a miserable time of it yesterday in the long game, 0 for 7, including a strikeout with the bases loaded. That ended the 17th inning. And he takes ball 1. Sitting today against the lefty. He'll be back in there tomorrow against the right-hander Joe Ross. Ball and a strike to Lucas. Well, the Mets began this stretch coming out of the All-Star break. 10 straight games against first-place teams. Dropped 2 out of 3 in St. Louis, and now on the verge of a loss in their first game here in D.C. Duda smacks one up the middle, and that's a base hit. So Duda has a pinch hit single. And the Mets have their 8th hit of the night. Now Curtis Granderson has gone 0 for 4 tonight. Strikeout, 2 ground balls and a pop-up, so he hasn't had the ball out of the infield.
Interesting hit by Duda. Most shifts that play against Lucas put a man right up the middle.
Well, you can't cover everything.
That's right. Especially with the defense they played tonight. due to not being held on with the 5-run lead for the Nats.
And Granderson hits one down the right field line. Harper racing over, but he'll play it on a hop. So the Mets with back-to-back hits and some life here in the 9th inning against Storen.
What a different game this has been if Torres could have came in and threw a shutout inning. Ball runs up the bat of Granderson, but he dumps it in front of Harper. There's really nothing that Duda could do here because of the 5-run lead. You got to be very careful, and he saw just recently Harper make a diving catch.
So 2 aboard with 1 out. Now Ruben Tejada will try and keep the line moving. Tejada 1 for 3 and a walk tonight. Mets now have 9 hits on the night. By the way, the Mets have had a hit with a runner in scoring position tonight. Matt Harvey.
That's right. What'd you say, 1 for 26 in yesterday's game?
1 for 26.
Wow.
And just to put that in perspective, that means that they made 25 outs with runners in scoring position. Elias tells us that in their entire history, the Mets had never had more than 19 outs in one game with runners in scoring position. So they obliterated that mark. Tied a club record with 25 left on base, but won the game. Now trying to put together an unlikely 9th inning rally. And Tejada takes a strike on the outside, 1-1. Daniel Murphy waiting on deck. When you bring in a closer with a 5-run lead and he gets in trouble, how much rope do you give him?
I think it's pitch count. You don't want him to throw more than 25 to 30 pitches because then he becomes, you can't use him the next night.
Here's strike 1 and 2. We saw that happen on Friday night with the Cardinals with Trevor Rosenthal. He threw 33 pitches, staggered his way to a save, and then was not only not available Saturday, wasn't available Sunday either. That's how they ended up with Carlos Martinez pitching the last 4 innings.
Well, it was interesting. He went to the All-Star game, right, and said he had a little tender elbow then and didn't want to pitch in the game.
He got the save Friday night. He did not look like himself.
I mean, he threw a 3-2 changeup, right?
He looked very frustrated. Just off the corner, 2-2. I mean, Mayberry in that last at bat fouled off a couple of high fastballs, and after the second one, Rosenthal came off the front of the mound hanging his head. He just couldn't believe that he couldn't put Mayberry away.
Just throw it by him, which he usually does when his arm's healthy.
So I think that bears watching for the Cardinals going forward, whether he's going to be healthy enough to make it the distance. 2-2 to Tejada. And he checks his swing, strike 3 call. 2 out.
Well, home plate umpire Mike Winters has been calling that ball down and away all game long. I thought he gave that pitch to the pitcher Storen, but he's been calling it all night.
So the Mets are down to their final out of the night. Daniel Murphy 1 for 4, doubled back in the first inning. Duda at second, Granderson at first, and 2 out. And Murphy socks one to center, but right at Taylor, and that'll do it. Storen gets the final 3 outs. The Nationals score 5 runs in the first 3 innings against Matt Harvey, and that turns out to be plenty as they take the opening game of this series, beating the Mets 7-2.
Well, a series that the Mets lined up their best pitching with Harvey starting tonight. He had a rough start after 9 days off. He righted the ship after that, but it was too late. And the Nationals and Matt Williams, another win here against the Mets.
Nats played some superior defense tonight, made half a dozen terrific plays behind Gio Gonzalez and the bullpen. Gio goes 6 innings to get the win. Harvey retired his last